the reason why you said that in uniting for this big Babel project, language breaks down.
Right. Yeah. So the idea would be something like this. So in natural groupings, like you get in Genesis 10, the language is kind of comes up from within the people, right, as they live in their place and in their families and so forth. But what's going on in the Babel account is it's a denial or a refusal to have this differentiation of peoples. We're all going to be one thing. Okay? So, but here's the problem. The more that you include under one structure, right, you end up with that language. How are you going to put this?
Too diverse or something?
Yeah. So you have enough, when you have enough people working on something or coming under one structure, there's going to be, as it were, different layers to that. And eventually you get to the place where the kind of the understanding, the inner thought world of one doesn't match up with the way that the words are being used by another, right?
Language by committee, kind of.
Yeah. That's a good example. Yeah, language by committee. And so, it may be that you kind of have this kind of tension there of trying to have everything under one, but then if it gets to a certain size, which helps with the self-sufficiency at one level, but then communication becomes impossible. Something like that is what I'm trying out. Yeah.
Well, there is Genesis 1, 2, and then 10, 11 have the thank you, John Hurchin from Kentucky, United States of America. So Genesis 1 and 2 have the top down, and God just outfits everything for this. Ultimately, this the man, woman, male and female. He made them, and then with 2, it's as you said, it's a lot more concrete, mud. That kind of
the
thing.
Bottom up.
And then before you know it, there's 3. And so it's like 2 is closer to 3 than 1 is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's right.
And so in 10 and 11, it's the same kind of thing.
Yes.
That when you get to 11, it's like you said in 10, ain't no problem. Some people are going here by the sea, others, go from place to place. And so, but maybe you can just go back to that first verse in chapter 11. Now, the whole world had one language and a common speech.
Or a few words, yeah.
Or in a few words.
Yeah, a few words.
Okay. So what's going on there? I mean, between 1 and 2 of Genesis, it's kind of retelling of creation story for a given reason. It's not like it's a second account, but it's just focusing on something else. So is that what is going on here? I mean, there had been 10 is in the background, right? I mean, all of that movement, people groups.
Yeah. So obviously it's in the background, at least for us. I mean, it's part of, how we have this text here. The way I've described this is the nesting doll feature. So we have an account in 10 of the founding of Babel with Nimrod. And so you have names, and so because 10's all names, it's very personal. And then that kind of gets pulled out. And 11, I see, is kind of recapitulating in a way. And yet, in chapter 11, it's the whole world, doing this. So maybe that's not the problem. Maybe the nesting doll isn't a good way of describing this. It's hard to fit these together in a very precise way. But
the whole world is it's more than just this one subset, and they.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
But it
However,
seems like it's one subset.
I think part of what's going on. This is why I said the way that this is described is. I think Scripture wants us to see this as a possibility for every people group. So it's going to be about, this is Babel, but the part of the reason for the anonymity in the way it's told is that to see it as something that could happen with any people group, right? So it's that's why it's kind of shorn of the names is to universalize it. Let me say one other thing that goes back to the Genesis 1, Genesis 2 analogy. So what's the big deal? Why? I think many of us, we could look at this and on a kind of just like a first reading, say like, why is God so upset with this idea of having a common project and using a common language and all of that? I mean, it could even look like a noble project, right? I think it's something like this. The nations in Genesis 10 are kind of the analog to something going on the social political level. They're the analog to what's going on back in Genesis chapter 2 with the creation of woman, where you have, God's kind of had Adam name all the beasts, and there's not one that's found to be kind of a suitable helper. And so he creates a helper, and we're told that this is a helper over against him. A helper over against him. And part of what's going on with that is that the way I said it, God creates Eve so Adam can hear the word no. It's something like that. That part of what's going on is if you have one that's entrusted with dominion, with overseeing, with stewarding things, but that one he doesn't know everything, can't see anything, you can't see everything, then it's a great help to have somebody that can see from a different angle and say, I know that's what you see from where you're at, but from over here, that's not the case, right? That's why the helper is over against them, right? It's not side by side, it's over against, right? And part of what's going on between chapter 10 and chapter 11 here, I think, is something like this. With chapter 11, if we force everybody into one society, and everybody has to, like, everything goes to one project that'll kind of reach the sky. It's going to give meaning to everything. What that does is it prevents us socially from having the counter narratives, the alternatives around us, to where we have people where we can say, wait a second, they don't do it that way. And actually, this problem that I face, they don't. Right? Because of that, right? That peripheral vision culturally gets squelched with this kind of empire tower building project. And I think that's part of why you have this picture in Genesis 10, which, by the way, as far as we know, it's the first time in human history that you have kind of nations like this, like trying to identify something of like what goes into the makeup of a people group. And then it's going to be something that when God called Abram and to make a nation out of him, this people group, he's going to give boundaries and things like this. You don't get this. Like gods in the ancient world, when they interact, for instance, in the ancient Near East, the call will be, you're going to conquer the four winds, the tribes, the tribes to unify the four winds and bring peace, right? With the idea of nation in the Hebrew Bible, it's the first time that you get, as it were, boundaries and limitations on a people that's part of their identity, and that's viewed as a good thing, right? And so there's something going on here where God seems to be in favor of there being multiplicities of people with kind of boundaries, between them. So that's yeah. But I think there's something like that. There's some analog, like what's going on where man needs woman to say, you don't have the whole picture, right? And people groups need other people groups to learn from, where we can, as it were, run experiments and learn what works here and be open to hearing from somebody else. So,
I just wanted to,
yeah.
thank you. I just want to follow up with what you said. One of the wisest things that one of my brother-in-laws ever said was, the trouble with living on your own is there's no one to disagree with you.
Right.
Which actually is basically what you're saying.
That's right. That's
But
right.
I found those words very wise.
Yeah.
And also for us, traveling to different places and learning how other people do things, often because of climate, like you mentioned about the Netherlands, expands our minds. And I see this as a gift that God has given us. And just a sort of aside from that, because I've brought up bilingual children, it actually... It's the one of the benefits of that is that they don't get Alzheimer's later on because their mind is or they're much less likely to get it.
Okay.
Maybe that was one of the benefits which God had in mind. I don't know, but it's just that expansion of our minds through moving through different cultures and learning from others, going in with an open mind and seeing this as a gift. Anyway.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Hey. Oh. Yeah. Hey, Nikos.
Hello. I mean, I'm late. I just because I don't know what exactly you said before that. Just a thought and a question I have on my mind when I read or excuse me about the story of Babel, like we can say, I think that because there is in the Orthodox hymnology there is this kind of distinction between Babel and Pentecost.
Right.
That Pentecost is like the reversal, the undoing of the Babel Tower. So I think that we can say that maybe it's controversial, but I would say it, that modern secular internationalism or United Nations or European Union or globalization, they try to undo the Babel Tower, to connect all the peoples and this, but in a sense, it's like building the Babel Tower, because, if we want to build a society that is based just on secular humanist principles, we can see how easy it is to crumble, to fall. And they say that in World War I, President Wilson said that after the war, we need to build global peace on the gospel. And the French secular president, Clemenceau, said, what are you talking about? I mean, are you serious? This is 20th century. What about... We need to build it in secular values, in mutual understanding and all these kind of things that sound good to most of the people, but they are actually misleading, or they are actually building. We want to build something unity, but without God.
Right. Yeah. So part of, I think, what's behind the current project, there's among Immanuel Kant's writings, there's one small tract that's oddly very readable for him. It's called Perpetual Peace.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah, Immanuel Kant wrote a little tract called Perpetual Peace. And so, I mean, late 1700s, he writes it, but in many ways, it's sort of the manifesto that is starting to be enacted finally institutionally 200 years later with European Union. And part of what you get is this. He has this idea that humanity has a maturation process that kind of mirrors that of an individual, where individuals eventually come to the place, ideally, where they're able to kind of create a law for themselves, like produce it themselves, and then live according to that, abide by it, right? And so this is his picture of morality, is to be able to live so that the maxim by which you do something you could wish to be universalized, right? Well, there's a version of this socio-politically for him, which is that people groups go through this process by which, as it were, the adolescence is to move from kind of more tribal, smaller things into nationhood. But then adulthood for people groups is to kind of create a law that you would all then live under, and that would dissolve into some kind of international governance, right? So he has this picture that eventually there would be an end to nations to live under a kind of international governance that would be just kind of a shared moral sense of how everything should be done, and we'll start doing that. And so
The so-called rules-based world order or something like that.
yeah. And so that's part of what's behind it. Now, there's some kind of quirks that come with that that I don't think we've worked through. For instance, the way we interact with, the way Europe interacts with the Middle East assumes that the Middle East is trying to move from childhood to adolescence because they're not national, right? They have more of a tribal sensibility. And so it's viewed as a good thing to get them to be national, right? But then you get things like Israel living over there, and they're supposed to be European, so they're supposed to be post-national. And so when they act like a nation, it's horrifying, right? But when the other people around them act like a nation, then that's a good thing because of this kind of maturation process that is imagined to be what needs to happen. There's this kind of, form of progress, and they're just at different stages. So that's, sometimes these kind of deep structures, create these, well, that's not just a paradox, but it's, it's a contradiction. It's a deep inconsistency. Yeah. And so
His tract is called
Perpetual Peace. Okay. Yeah, Perpetual Peace. Yeah, it's very important. It's not much read, but there's actually a version printed by the EU, with the circle of stars on it and all of that, a translation. You can get it. So the founders were kind of aware that this is what they were working off of at some level. So, yeah.
It was written maybe after
After the French Revolution, yeah, because he saw that as the possibility of a unifying that would move in this direction. But anyhow, yeah.
Well, following your presentation, it's probably a good idea that we don't try to speak Esperanto as one, but I'm reminded how that was a failed project.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed hearing how the part of the no name in the section you were talking about, because of course if there's anything worse than being called a bad name, it's not being given
no
a name
at all. Yeah.
in the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah.
And I wanted to also just reflect a little, maybe your view of this. It seems like in God's action, there's almost this anti-creation activity going on, where he's not using speech in a different way. It's kind of undoing creation, leading to chaos, and it's really kind of interesting how the word "let's make brick."
Yeah,
If you've probably if you've seen if you spelled backwards in Hebrew, it's "let's confuse," and it's a really it kind of shows how God is actively against any speech that would usurp his that would cross the boundaries,
right.
because he's the only one who can create in this sense. But so what do you think about, or maybe what does anyone think about the whole use of one language? This kind of continues to be an issue. I mean, especially nowadays where we're, you know, you could argue, somebody has argued that there's actually almost nothing left of culture anywhere. You go to you go to any country in the world, and it's, you know, not any country, but
No,
it seems like these
cities at least look a lot alike when
Yeah,
you go from one to
there's-
the next. Yeah.
the culture has been replaced with ideology, but it's still an ideology, like what you said, is a self-sufficient one that is trying to do a creative work, but without the speech of God, let's say. So anyway, that's all.
Wow. Yeah, go, Louis.
Yeah, like this whole discussion, I've been kind of reminds me of a discussion I had online with some people. Like we basically talked about what's the definition of a civilization. I wonder if I can find it somewhere. Yeah, basically. And I was saying, like, in my eyes, a civilization implies that there is a common way of doing things, such as political organization, higher learning, shared values. Doesn't have to be monolingual, but there has to be one or few lingua franca, which is, I don't know if you know what that means, like common languages, basically, that are shared by everyone. And it also doesn't have to be one state, but there has to be a common understanding among polities, how things are done and how international relations work, and an acknowledgement of the others as equals. And then basically I was like, thinking like, but we could say that like in our modern world, basically the whole world is a civilization. Like sure, there are some places, like some states that are kind of having a rivalry in some way, but if we think about it, like people back in the days, like 200 years ago, already talked about a common Western civilization or a common European civilization in which there was conflict between different states that existed, and maybe nowadays we have the same but on a global level, and we have a common language, it's English. Like Esperanto might have failed, but basically the idea of it has been realized because everyone, like at least to some extent in the world, is exposed and like is learning English, especially the people who are educated in higher institutions, and also all of the universities are connected. They have professors going from one place to another. Like so much of the systems are the same. And I'm wondering, like, if we would look at modern society through the eyes of the Babel story, if we would be at a very advanced stage of this tower building project. Like if we also look at how the economy has been evolving in the last 200 years with industrialization or digitalization, now like projects like AI, which are want to replace basically all thinking, or even some are even saying like we are going to build like a godlike entity. And I don't know, like maybe our modern society needs more such stories as back in the days, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I'm wondering.
Yeah, those are great questions. Good thoughts.
Virtual bricks.
Yeah, virtual bricks. Yeah. So there's a rabbinic tradition that what you get in the tower is actually that it's an idol, right? And I think that that's not whether or not it's literally so. I mean, it's a temple going up, and there's definitely an element to it of worshiping the product of our own hands. And kind of the essence of idolatry is I will make something that I will put over me, and then I'll bow down, right? And that's very clearly an element in some, for some people in what's going on with AI. I mean, it's explicit. It's not a hidden thing. You have some that are, kind of taking this in a religious sense and so forth. So, but yes, I think that if you could, the two elements here are something like the need for some kind of modularity in humanity, right? That there be different things going on that allows people to sort out and kind of work out different problems because they have a kind of a distinct cultural grouping, that doesn't have to be homogenized. And then this kind of Babel thing, which, yes, I think the current kind of globalism it's a version of Babel. And part of the question is, how high can the tower go before the language breaks apart? And you're right, kind of the irony is we're sitting here doing all this in English, right? In Greece, right? And there's lots of different languages, like mother tongues represented here, but we're using this, as it were, as a shared medium. And so, that does something. Like with all of these technologies, there's something gained, and there's also something lost. And so it's the nature of every technology that there's some kind of a trade-off. I think on a lot of them, it's a net benefit, but I think there should always be some kind of a question as to with each new technology, is it worth it? Is this going to be a net benefit? And AI is one of those where how far it's used and where and so forth.
What would Jacques Ellul
there you go. Yeah.
The technological bluff.
Yeah.
We're very good at saying, let's do this.
Right.
You need this.
Yeah.
But without looking at the cost.
At what the consequence. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And can I just ask one? Where's the mic?
I've got it. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, George. And
Yeah.
Hi
all, and thank you for everyone for the wonderful, reflections and so on.
A little louder.
Yeah. Do you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. The thing is, I just wanted to expand on what Nico said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I have also thought Babel as the sort of the antithesis of the Pentecost. The Pentecost, where in Pentecost you have like the apostles talking to people of various nations, and they can communicate with them without the crowd knowing their language, without any issue. And in Babel you have the opposite. You have like people that can't communicate with one another anymore. But what I want to share is that it reminds me of another thing. In the beginning of Genesis, you have the snake, the devil, who says to Adam and Eve that you will become gods, right? And of course, this is disastrous, and it's it's a fallacy. It is a trap. But then God, actually, in the New Testament, via the work of Jesus, comes to actually turn humans into someone who has the capacity to become Christ-like and like God, but by grace. So I think that maybe there is a pattern there. I mean that God in Babel and also, of course, in Genesis 1 is not doesn't agree with what happens, but he tries to actually give that to humans in a way that it isn't disastrous to them and it is of benefit to them. I mean, the coming of people together is what happens actually in church when we have the people of God, the holy nation, which is the church, right? But in Babel, this is like discouraged, and so this is the same thing maybe happens where devil says you will become gods, and then Christ, the work of Christ is to be in union with God and actually become God by grace. This is just an idea that I want to share.
Yeah, that's great. I'll say a word about that before we move on, and then we can come back to John if you want. But so this idea of something that is deeply problematic on our own becoming then something that happens by grace in another setting, I think there's something profound to that in this case. There's another element going on here. One is, when you read this, God and humanity don't talk to each other in Babel, right? So God's spoken with Noah and so forth, but here it's human beings kind of exhort each other, and then God, he says, let's do this, but there's no communication back and forth. I think there is an element of a reversal of this with Pentecost, but there's another element that comes in first. And that is that what's going on, so Pentecost, very specifically, it's the celebration of the giving of Torah at Sinai. That's what the festival is. So you have the Exodus, Passover, 50 days later, you have Sinai, the giving of, the Decalogue, at least at Sinai, right? And so it's the celebration of the giving of Torah. Now, when you read in the Targumim, these kind of Aramaic glosses on the Hebrew Bible, we've got two of them for Genesis 20. When God speaks to the people there at Sinai, you get this kind of, the imagery is that flames come out, fly around, and then engrave that stone tablet, the stone tablets that Moses, on the front and the back, going back and forth, okay? There's also, we have in some of the Midrashim, these kind of rabbinic sermons, where when God speaks, that flame, it breaks into 70 flames and goes throughout the world in the 70 languages of the nations. All that to say, you have already in this kind of Jewish understanding, you have some beginnings of a kind of a resolution of this problem with the reception of God's speech there at Sinai. And so I think part of what's going on at Pentecost is that you have this in the background. You've got Babel, but you also have the giving of God's moral instruction, as it were. And what happens there that's different, and the reason that it's sort of a depiction of New Covenant, is that the flames that fly, they come and they rest, but where do they rest at Pentecost? On human beings, right? Yeah, on the head. So it's the human body, as it were, that's going to be the one that's inhabited. And so this is part of the resolution here that enables people to move towards a form of speech and a form of life that can bridge the people groups, is that they're doing this in a conversation, receiving instruction from God, rather than it being just kind of my group versus your group, or this one that subsumes all of them. And so you get this kind of part of what's distinctive, I think, in the kind of unity of nations that comes with the Christian people is that you don't have one nation that becomes overall. You have a unity in Christ, but the nations remain the nations, right? And even at the end time picture, right, it's the nations are coming into Jerusalem and so forth. There's not a loss of distinction. So there seems to be some desire there for, as it were, the people groups to still be the people groups that they are, but kind of come to a relation of mutual blessing under Christ, something like that. I think is, yeah. So I don't know if that was a sufficient response, but yeah. Hey, it's so good to see you. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Yeah.
So thank you, Daniel. I would like to maybe make some comments regarding Genesis. Again, I will be in the same path with the previous people. Now, number one, we see in Genesis 2, rather, God says to the human beings, go and multiply. He made them according to his image. And he said, then go and multiply and replenish the earth, okay, with my image, right? Genesis 10, we have the story of Nimrod. And I read there, the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, right? You know, there are some commentators that they say there that he was conquering one after the other the cities, being the first imperialist, somehow.
Exactly.
So what we have there, as Nathan said, God created everything from chaos to order. He wanted to replenish the earth with his image, the people. And after the fall, we come again, coming back to chaos, that instead of earth being replenished with the image of God, he is replenished with another image that stays until today. You know, the imperialist predisposition of people that always is occurring, right? First comment in that, your opinion. Second, I will not associate, which I agree 100%, Babel with Pentecost. I agree. Yeah, I know this interpretation, but I want to associate it with the Garden of Eden. What is this? We know that the Garden of Eden, there are many common elements later with the sanctuary and with the temple, right? Okay. So many scholars, they believe is the first sanctuary, the temple city.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah,
the temple city, okay, that God wants to fill the whole earth with his temple, which is the place that he meets with the human beings, right? And now we see an attempt of human beings to create a name for themselves in the Tower of Babel and somehow to dethrone God. So there you have the godless city. Question. Does this attempt that God is not tolerating in Babel resembles, as Nico said before, modern humanism that is trying to dethrone God using new technologies, changing asphalt and bricks from stone and all these things, new technological elements popping up? And then, does our modern civilization, which seems to be so appealing, resembles the Tower of Babel that dethrones God and enthrones man?
Yeah, so as I said before, I think that there's a lot going on here of, there's a lot of, that will resonate with in kind of contemporary globalist society with Babel. I think it does, it's something that is recapitulated, I think, in every kind of empire, and globalism is a sort of empire. It may not be a direct military one or something like that, but there's other ways to demand that everybody become one thing. And so, yes, I think there's similarities here. So look, all the way back in chapter 4, you have this sort of ambivalent relation to technologies in this kind of creation account, and this continues, right? There's an ambivalence over it. In this case, what you see is, let's make brick in place of stone and so forth. There's different ways you could look at this. On the one hand, like I said, you could say, well, there's a need and they're fulfilling it and so forth. Fair enough. But I think what makes the technology, the problem here is, as it were, this vertical axis, it's the aim they're making of it, right? That what they're aiming at very specifically is a life without God, right? And so that's a problem here. I don't think that technology has to be that way.
No. Just
Yeah.
that was an example. I'm not saying this
Yeah.
is the main point. The main point is the throning of God.
Right.
Remember. Just I'm saying that it seems so weird that God is against something that comes with new technology. So it's not that the point. This is not the point. I was not focusing there.
Yeah.
And just to bring to the conversation that in the next chapter 12, God is the one giving the name to Abraham.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a clear
chapter
contrast.
11 that they want to make a name for themselves. Now God is the one
Yeah.
who gives the name that we know in the Old Testament times. Name means personality and traits and character and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I would like to say something about technology. I think technology, sometimes we misunderstand the role of technology. I think that technology is more of the tool. The driving force are the ideas, it's not technology itself. So, we can be afraid of like this whole AI thing that could be like modern Frankenstein. But I think, and I'm giving emphasis on that, I think the more the humanist, secular moralism, it's even more dangerous to humans. Like in 19th and after the Enlightenment, so-called Enlightenment, and especially in the 20th century and now, many people think that we can achieve like world peace and equal rights for all and all these like noble causes and noble slogans, but without God. I think that is the ultimate hubris, actually.
Yeah, well, I guess I'd put it this way. I do think it's hubris to think we could do it. I don't think, as it were, God would be happy to see equal rights for all and all of that. I don't think that he would be upset if that were to happen. I think what the point of this is that when we try to replace God, we always have to put something in his place, and whatever we put in his place has this way of either kind of thinning us out to the point where we kind of begin to lose meaning altogether, and so the languages don't function, something like that. That's one way to read what's going on with Babel. Or what you see in other cases is that those things end up kind of devouring the people that try to worship them, and that's the very classic thing that you get with idolatries in the Bible. Idols want to eat your children. So, yeah.
And I think to add this, I think that many times it's actually self-justification. Like people are super like social justice warriors and all this kind of ultra liberals. I think that maybe without understanding, without knowing, it's like they think that because I want equal rights or whatever they mean with equal rights. I mean, is it a right for a gay man or a gay couple to have to adopt a child? Is it? I don't know.
Right.
They consider themselves like morally better. So it's not actual. It serves a psychological need. Sometimes we don't have an actual impact in the world. It's just like because I wear a sticker like freedom to Biafra or something. Then I consider myself, I'm righteous.
Yeah. I think one of the versions of the tower is are the kind of the moral adages that we use, and it's easy to think that the good person is the one who repeats slogans that are high sounding, whereas I think a biblical picture of goodness is that it's a person that actually promotes goods for the people that he or she is in contact with, so to the range that you have any effectiveness, you want goods to go out that far. And part of what is behind this is that a healthy social awareness for a human being involves some sense of where your own boundaries are and the boundaries of your people group. And there's some things that we can promote good only when we're aware that our reach has a certain edge to it, something like that. I think there's an element of wisdom in this. So, yeah. Okay. Any other last thoughts? We need to wrap it up because it's 10 o'clock. So, yeah. Well, thank you for thinking through some of this with me. So,
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. So, yeah.